off and away.
Yeah, so this week we're talking about exploring how digital tools can improve workplace safety in manufacturing environments. And that's another very important topic to talk about, and something it's very close to us as part of our app. There's so many technological business there that's all based around safeties and physical tools that they can implement in a workplace to help and enhance workplace safety. And so it's a lot of things are all very, very heavily focused on safety now.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of crazy stuff goes on. People are trying to be productive. They're rushing. They're in a hurry. So people will be prepared to cut corners, and that's what inevitably, if it's not managed, can lead to accidents and some pretty nasty ones. So I guess the physical side of safety and safety procedures has become more legislative, and there's a lot of due diligence done now in manufacturing to make sure they're doing the right thing.
There's a customer where Matt's been building an SOP system where they wanted all of the safety checks all right at the front end, and he's managed to build that in exactly and replicate what they were doing with the paper system, but in real time on our app right now.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, it was a really good spot in essence of really bringing the safety hazards to the individual operators at each process step. Putting the hazard symbols really large, having them being acknowledged, people signing their name digitally to say I'm aware of the risks and I'm following the right procedures. And the way that Matt and Ben have done that and deliver that into the product is incredible. But what it actually means in the real world is that people are forced to make a decision about whether to work safely or whether to not comply with the right rules, and they're things now that are being measured can be improved again and again based on the track record that they inevitably create.
I mean, elements like introducing hardware such as robots and technological advancements in those kind of areas where there's some really sensitive tasks to be dealing with chemicals or potentially explosive and products in a manufacturing environment. It take the people away from that and let the machines do the work, and we're seeing more and more of that every day now in manufacturing, and it's how you can just help prevent people being there in the first place, so that there's no safety risk.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's part of the hierarchy of controls is to remove the hazards altogether. So taking people away from those risky tasks is a key point of safety management. And I think there are a lot of places where that can be applied. You can imagine, with robots and with physical technologies, it brings a cost. It's change management. So businesses have to recognize that there's a way that they must do that or that they can do that, and it be appropriate to their needs. What inevitably happens behind that is there are some tasks that fall into we're not quite sure whether to spend money against that, and we still have to do it manually. How do we do it safely? How do we ensure that the workers have the right protective equipment, are aware of the risks, have had the right training? And I suppose that's why in SQCDP, that's why the S is right at the front, in that it's so very, very important in everything that manufacturers do, is that they do it safely, and they have to find the right way whenever there's a human or an operative in there.
We actually had the privilege to go and visit this site a few months ago as well, didn't we? And something that they're working on right now with a lot of things is with their technological advancements, is something called a digital twin, when they'll develop something. And he took us through some examples of digital twins. A Formula One car he took us through. So when things like protecting the pit crews when the car comes in and making sure it enters safely and the wheels come on and off safely. That's everything's all based around safety, and making a digital version of something first is a way to try and prove a concept that something's safe before you do it physically.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's it. It's all of those models are based on the data that they collect from somewhere. And I think that then it's how many years they need to collect that data over, how much automation that can apply to it, and how much actually has to come from the real world from the team with their reporting and their procedures. But yeah, it allows you to build big models that allow you to predict in the future how to change a process and how to improve it. Yeah, well, I think it's where it's solving a problem. I think it's the VR headsets. They've been around for a little while and they're getting a lot lighter, and obviously the technology in them and how they create the kind of space for people to work in and mimic the real world, so someone can perform a task with a VR headset on and essentially train to riskier tasks or high cost training items, to do in the real world. They can bring them back.
Yeah, suddenly you haven't got
scenarios.
inexperienced people doing high risk tasks anymore, and you can do it completely virtually, can't you?
Yeah, you can do it. I suppose you could take it back to like the airline industry and pilot training. They're not quite jumping in a Boeing 737 or an Airbus A310 and flying around the world doing it badly for a while. They do a lot of simulation first, and they're the kind of technology that are now suddenly accessible to manufacturing in different scenarios, whether it's lifting boxes, moving pallets, operating forklift trucks, or operating direct sort of OEM equipment and CNC machines. It's all stuff that can be modeled in the sort of the headsets in the space, and then people train to them, and then people apply them in real world.
Yeah, things like predictive maintenance as well. I think you just before we started the call told us a story about a supervisor that was maintaining a machine, weren't you?
Yeah. I suppose it related to safety. It was an awful incident that happened a few years ago with a print machine where someone damaged the hand based on a cleaning procedure, and that cleaning procedure had probably been done in a very risky way for a number of months and years, and had been spotted and identified, but had never been reported, had never been in the working culture because the reporting system wasn't there. Things weren't accessible to report near misses or hazards or risky pieces of work, and it led to this individual actually damaging his own hand with a behaviour that he probably wouldn't have seen the risk in. But within investigations and so on, you find out that, oh yeah, he's been doing it for a long time, and we thought it was a bit risky, but nobody'd said no. And I think the principle of that links back to what we're doing. So VR headsets would allow us to train in a best practice procedure of how to do some particular tasks, but identifying what those tasks are and how comes from the reporting of the incidents and the near misses, that nearly happened, and that applies across a lot of the manufacturing industry and working practices that we would see, where it isn't accessible to get people to highlight the issues and incident reports, so the business doesn't learn what is really going on. And I'm very encouraged by the way that we're building that into the product, and that Ben and Matt are sort of ensuring that in particular in our operator toolkit part of the data entry app, it's accessible for people to highlight things, report things, and ensure that there is a follow-up where something could be better, or where something is going to potentially prevent a serious injury.
Yeah, I guess the development behind our app's all about making those operator tools available right there to the operator, so that they have the opportunity to report these hazards, report these accidents as and when they happen, or hopefully before they happen, so that something like that incident with the guy's hand that got trapped in the machine that can't happen in future. It's and that's probably down to a behavioural trend of him being in a very comfortable environment, and if he does that on a regular basis, he doesn't see it being an issue until then something's happened, and then he thinks about it and goes, "Oh, I've been doing this for 2 years here. It's actually, well, why was I doing that in the first place?" And maybe if somebody reported that hazard and it had been recorded, I might not have done that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's and probably everybody listening or watching the call is gonna say that the know of an event, or the know of something that could have been prevented if it was being highlighted through kind of hazard management and incident reporting and real clear, transparent flows to management, so that managers can effectively manage their processes and see the things that are going on. When there's an absence of that, these events happen, and people will say, whether it's people slipping off the rung of a ladder, or people using the wrong drills for a particular application, or hand tools, it's all going on. But if you can see it and you can start to highlight it by encouraging it to people, but it really truly being accessible through their interface with the business, then the likelihood of you remedying them and solving those problems before they really get into big problems is much more likely, and effectively you can do your job better. Yeah, and I think it's, we've probably all seen that every so often you will have something from the safety team or from an IT administrator saying it is time for you to do your display screen equipment workstation appraisal to ensure that it's working for you, it's appropriate, it isn't introducing you to risks. That's really good. They're done very infrequently because the risks there pretty low. But when you translate that to a manufacturing environment where there's so very much going on, there's time pressure. There are people trying to meet really fine, really high quality standards, and so they're working hard to achieve them. You can quite often take your mind off the safety aspects. You can do things to hurry. You can do things to get the job done. And these audits and reminders, especially when things are, pre-use inspections on tools or work equipment, or workplace assessments pre-start before you start a job, when they come into somebody's workflow and are then in a timely fashion performed to the right standard, they're the things that highlight things that are deviant and not being done correctly, so that you have a handle on hazards and stop them turning into incidents. So that makes the workplace safe. And again, it's great how we're building that into the app.
And I mean, let's face it, to any business, isn't it? You don't get any productivity out of being safe. You don't get really, you don't make any money out of being safe. It's just a given. You have to be safe. You have to make sure your staff, when they attend work, and make sure after they leave a shift at the end of 8 hours, they leave in the same format as they arrived. Generally speaking,
they're
not missing anything.
Yeah, I think there's a legal obligation in there somewhere. I think there's something associated with 1974, but I think there's then the moral duty, and there's of course having a great safe working culture, particularly in a hazardous environment. We've gone into process environments, we've gone into areas where there are forges operating at 800 degrees, we've got robots and automated guided vehicles moving around. So we see those hazards, and of course then you get to the traditional things such as forklift trucks and HGVs moving around and people walking across service yards without high-vis jackets on. And that's all manufacturing. It's as risky as anything. So you have to manage these risks. And one of the tools that obviously we're offering is that safety managers, safety professionals can see the data coming from their teams, their people in their environment through the audits and the processes that are built into the workflows that we're building in drive productivity. But the S in the safety of SQCDP is so incredibly important. It is just a starting point. Let's do everything safely, then let's be productive and make some money after that. Let's look after our people.
Anyway, we just went over about 15 minutes there, so that'll probably do for today, I think.
Yeah, Kenny, you got to stop me when I got off on one, Callum. It's again, safety's so important, and the people watching will know all of these incidents in their mind of people being injured, people bumping their head, people slipping and tripping and falling over, everything that could be prevented. So the ability to observe things in action and make things better before those incidents occur is everybody's duty. So if we're making that easier, then people should be in touch, and again, we're helping everybody with what we're doing and how we're doing it. So
that's always the end goal, isn't it? It's just for us to help everyone as much as we can.